the new artist on PRD. And this is Mignola, the creator of Hellboy. It's all A+ material. So we're mostly going to do questions. So please, everybody, be thinking about questions and do what the lady said. Speak loudly as you can so you don't have a mic. But we're mostly going to do questions. We're going to talk for a minute, and then we're going to ask questions. So have questions. So the first order of business that you want to get out of the way right away.
No Hellboy 3. To the best of my knowledge.
Nobody can ask again, right?
What about Hellboy 4?
More likely.
Yeah, so we got a lot coming out. Who's read The Fury? The first 2 issues of The Fury?
Yes. We will also try to tell not to tell you what's going to happen in issue 3.
Yeah, it's really difficult for him, but we're going to keep it back. So that's coming soon. Oh, what about, have you seen Tyler's debut on BPRD? We just got 1 issue out so far.
Yeah, this one.
So anybody wants to talk to Tyler about what it's like working with him, tell me.
Ask.
But anything you want to say about what we're doing right now? Trying to destroy the world.
Yeah, we're pretty much blowing stuff up fast. Do you have anything when I go to the floor? We have a Hellboy book, a hardback graphic novel by Richard Corbin and I coming out in October.
It's called House of the Living Dead. It's our first original graphic novel.
And it's
Silence yourself.
it's a follow-up actually to Hellboy in Mexico. So it's part of Hellboy's lost 6 months in Mexico where he was too drunk to remember what he did. There's also a Hellboy in Mexico story drawn by me that'll be in an issue
of Dark Horse Presents.
Yeah.
We're actually going to have, I think this is kind of an announcement, we're going to have 3 months. We recently relaunched Dark Horse Presents, the anthology that started Dark Horse Comics back in 1986. This is our 25th anniversary. We recently relaunched the anthology, and in this winter, we're going to have 3 months in a row where we've got a Hellboy story drawn by Mike with a Hellboy cover drawn by Mike. We've got Duncan doing a BPRD story with Mike and John Arcudi, and then we'll have
Duncan doing a cover, which is
gorgeous. Yeah, great cover. Duncan did an amazing cover, and then we're gonna have a Lobster Johnson story in DHP, written just by Mike and drawn by Joe Chiaro, right?
Yeah, I was trying to pronounce his last
Can
name.
you edit that part? Yeah, you don't know how to pronounce his name because we won't email him, but he's
really good. And speaking of Lobster Johnson,
we found him on Facebook, right?
yes. And speaking of Lobster Johnson.
Oh yeah, Burning Hand.
I don't know any of the actual information, I just know his face. And so there's they're getting done.
Yeah, Lobster Johnson, The Burning Hand, is a book that you may have heard us talk about for the last
5 years.
At one point, Guy was going to draw it, then he got busy, or at one point, I think Kennedy was going to draw it. There's been all these different people attached.
Yeah.
And it's finally coming out in January, I believe, with covers by Dave Johnson, who's been doing the great covers for a bunch of our books. Dave's up for an Eisner Award this year. And you and Corbin.
I hope you win.
I hope you win. Really hope you win. What's the guy's name who's drawing that one? It's hard to pronounce. Hansi Zoniak, who's doing an amazing book for Image. Whatever happened to Jake Ellis or something. A really great looking book for them, and he's drawing Lobster Johnson, and it's really gorgeous. It's really cool. So we've got a lot of new artists coming into the fold, coming into the family. We're doing a real variety of books. In 2012, my VP of marketing recently referred to 2012 as the year of Hellboy. And I was like, yeah, but we almost have no Hellboy books coming out. But we've got so much other stuff, Lobster Johnson.
It's going to be the year of BPRD and Lobster Johnson.
We got a lot going on with those books. It's the first time I think ever that we're going to have multiple BPRD titles coming out in a single month. Because the main series that Tyler's doing is going to continue monthly, and then we're also going to have some side projects, some stuff me and him writing together that we're bringing in new artists for. We've got one written by a new writer for us that we're going to announce later. It's extremely excited. So we're
Real fancy new, right?
Fancy.
Not really new.
Not new to us. Mostly new to comics, I think. So we got that.
I can't believe it.
I can't either.
So,
these guys are going to attack. So.
Yeah, I'll just wait for you.
Okay.
So who's got a question?
Yes.
You gonna bring back Baltimore and a book? Are we gonna have a second one?
A novel?
A novel, yes.
No. Now, I mean, Baltimore, the original novel, covered this huge range of time with that character. We're continuing the comic book series in this 10-year gap in the middle of the novel. So there's no plan to do a sequel to the novel right now, but to continue to putty in the blank in the middle of this thing. So there's the second Baltimore miniseries.
Did that start coming out yet?
I don't think so.
But is the first one of those out yet?
The Curse Bell. The Curse Bell should be coming out any month.
The hardcover of the first series is already out.
And on the bestseller.
New York Times bestseller list, and it's up for an Eisner tonight for best printed series.
So yeah, we'll be continuing that as a comic. Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah.
Future Witchfinder Abe stories coming up in 2012? 11?
There is a lot of Abe coming up. Right now, there's a two-parter coming out by Arcudi and James Herron, and then that will round out a second Abe trade paperback called The Devil Does Not Jest and Other Stories that will come out early next year. And then a little bit later, we're going to be doing a pretty extensive series of miniseries with Abe. Abe's going to go on a bit of a journey, and we're starting to work on that now, although it doesn't come out for a long time. It picks directly up off of certain
events that are coming in BGID.
So we got to get there first, and it's a long road to get there, but then there's going to be a lot of Abe doing his own.
But yeah, there are no plans for more Abe flashbacks. What was Abe doing in 1985? We don't have any plans right now for any more of that stuff. We're going to be moving Abe forward after The Devil Does Not Jest stories. We'll be moving Abe forward in a kind of a parallel line to the regular BPRD book.
There's so much happening right now, today, in the Hellboy books. The things that are happening with Hellboy, the things that are happening with BPRD, there's just so much changing, and the world, changes in the world are accelerating so much that the more we talk about it, the less we're thinking about the flashback story.
Right.
There's still going to be some Hellboy and stuff like that.
Yeah, because what's going on in BPRD is affecting the entire world. And so to do that in just one monthly book is really difficult. So some of these BPRD things Scott and I are writing involve characters you may have never even seen before, or they walk by in the background of a panel, but we want to put these guys in the field so you see what's going on over here, you see what's going on over here. And Witchfinder is the series I would love to do more of, but we're spread so thin. We have, Kevin Scott, there's 3 writers doing everything. We all have our hands full. I'm trying to go back to be a full-time comic book artist, so I'm trying to... and as many great artists as we're working with, they're all kind of spoken for. So Ben Stenbeck, who did the last Witchfinder, he's on Baltimore. So right now, I mean, I'd love to do more Witchfinder, but we need a creative team that we thought was right for it. And also, we've done a lot of books on the stand.
Yeah, and there's a real urgency to a lot of the stories that we got to tell, and there's not with Witchfinder. There's not the next chapter of Edward Gray's life doesn't really need to be told right now. So, whereas I guess with Lobster Johnson, the exception is that it's just so fun.
Right, and he's been out of the spotlight for a long time, and he's probably the character that people constantly keep saying, when are we going to see a Lobster Johnson book?
So there's a 5-issue thing with him early next year, and then there'll be more frequent 1- and 2-issue things after that. So.
And unlike most of what I do, like the first Lobster Johnson miniseries, the one I wrote, which took place, at the end of his career, this one will actually be like Lobster Johnson year 1. We'll actually, for the first time in history of the Hellboy universe, we'll be starting a book. Well, it'll be book 2. But we will be at the beginning of the guy's career.
Yes.
Any plans for any more art books? Like, I mean, the universe is expanding pretty much, so like stuff like sketches from the other artists and that sort of thing.
We've always wanted to do Art of Hellboy 2, but we haven't focused on that, and I think maybe part of the reason is that when we're doing the library editions, we're doing such amazing sketchbooks in there that a lot of the stuff that would go into Art of Hellboy 2 is going there. And the BPRD hardcovers, you've seen Plague of Frogs Volume 1, that big fat hardcover with 3 trades in it. Yeah. We're expanding those sketchbook sections with any good stuff that we can dig up. So the stuff that would potentially go in Art of Hellboy or Art of BPRD or Art of Guy Davis is going into those hardcovers. So we still want to do Art of Hellboy 2 at some point, or an expanded edition.
I mean, I'd kind of like to do a Art of Hellboy that covered not just me, but like Corbin and Duncan. So you've got something, more along the lines of the Buffy, art of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or something like that. So that's a possibility. But again, Scott's so busy just trying to keep all our trains, running within a year of on time. And the idea, having the time to say, now let's start playing around with an art book. It's just really, really tough. But one of these days.
Yep.
You include so many folk stories and myths from around the world. How would you come by them to include them?
Use bookstores. Everybody loves to think that I'm in Prague with a monk, and he's pulling stuff out. But really, it's equally dank, dark places. But they're like used bookstores in Berkeley or Powell's Books in Portland, Oregon. I've just been collecting that stuff for since I was in high school, and at least 2/3 of the books I've still never opened. So one of the comforts to me is I look around my studio, which has got my folklore library in it, and I think, if I ever run out of ideas, all I have to do is start opening books. When I did The Crooked Man with Richard, my Appalachian folk tale based story, I'd always known I wanted to do something in the Appalachian Mountains, and when I started working with Richard, I knew nobody would be better at doing that kind of stuff, but I'd never read those stories. But fortunately, over the years, I collected 3 different books of Appalachian folk tales. And it was really fun. I just pulled these books out and started reading, and as I started reading, circled this bit, circled that bit, and so, by the time I was halfway through the first book, I had The Crooked Man had cobbled itself together. So I've got at least 2.5 books of unread Appalachian folklore. And then, whole books. I mean, I've got like 3 books on Russian folklore, which I've read, this much of one, and, they're like this big. So, yeah, my goal is to eventually touch on all that stuff.
Anything going on with the restaurant?
No. That, of all the things I've done, that thing was exactly what it was supposed to be. Some characters, like almost everything in BPRD and Hellboy, all these characters go, I have Eddie my own book, I've got 6,000 other stories. But screw on ahead, page 20, whatever he said, I'm done. That's as good as you're ever going to do it, leave it alone.
Yeah, can you say something about what it was like working with John Severin?
It was amazing. It's been amazing working with John. I was lucky enough. I was doing a road trip that took me through Denver, which is where John lives. And he's older. He doesn't do conventions too much anymore. So I kind of figured I'd never meet him if I didn't drop in his house. So I dropped in, and it was amazing. I get to his house and he comes to the door in a suit. It's like Sunday morning. He comes to the door in a suit with a red tie, and brings me in. His wife is in bed the entire time. We have this great lunch. Hanging out in bed while his wife just crashed out of bed. And I'm like, where's the studio? Where's the studio? He has this great big living room dining room, and in one corner, there's this little table, and it's a flat table. It's not a drafting table. It's a flat wooden table with stacks and stacks of books around it, and like loose leaf sheets with reference all over the place, just stacked up all around. And there's one board laying on this Bristol board laying on this flat table, and he'd gone in and ruled out all the panel borders. And it was a weird page that had flashbacks, so he'd done his rough panel borders for flashbacks, and it was a weird layout. And he had started just filling in the first panel. And it looked to me like he hadn't done any layouts, there was no forethought, it was just, well, I think, 6 panels will look good like this. And then he starts drawing this angel figure. It's a panel where somebody sees an angel, and he's drawing the angel, and he hasn't roughed out anything else on the page. There's no layouts around, he's just going straight to ink, drawing this one figure in the background. Like,
this, by the way, is how you're not supposed to do it.
But when you've been doing it for 60 years, you probably figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my God. And then, when the page was done, like eventually the page showed up to Dark Horse, it was like, yeah, I remember, seeing that, and it was a great page, and it really looked like he just read the script and was like, all right, I think I got it, bam. And, he's slower than he probably used to be, but meticulous as you've seen. So it's been amazing. It was a rush every day. My assistant, Dan Shaven, Michael Shaven's brother, he works with us on all the Hellboy books, and he gets the pages and immediately scans and emails with Mike and Arcudi and everybody, and we're just like, oh God, this guy's 89, and he's blowing our minds every page.
Yeah,
it was great. Next question. Yep.
Yeah, do you have plans to work on the thing again?
We're going to be doing a short story. His next thing up is a short story in the Savage Sword of Robbie Howard book that we're doing. But he's doing a little bit less work now. So 5-issue miniseries is a huge commitment for him at the time. So something a little smaller is next up. But yeah, I want to keep working with him as long as I can. Yep.
In a lot of the Hellboy and Meteority stories, there's a focus on Lovecraftian folklore and European or African or I guess Latin American folklore, but you said that the Crooked Man is an Appalachian folktale. Do you think that you'll start going more into American folklore, whether it's Native American tales or more recent ones?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually kind of embarrassing. I realized I had done nothing, almost nothing. I had done very few stories set in America, and I had done no stories dealing with American folklore. And even Appalachian folklore is mostly English and Irish translated to America. But the Native American is something I'm not very familiar with, but I've been amassing books the last couple of years, so it's just a matter of me finding the time to read it, find the monster that would be fun to draw, and say, oh, let's build a story around that. So I would love to. The beauty of the way Hellboy's set up is that he has been on the world, in the world for 50 years, and he's had this huge chunk of time where he wasn't burdened with being the beast of the apocalypse or the king of England or anything else. He was just a dude roaming around getting into trouble. So we're going to continue these graphic novels. The plan is to continue these graphic novels. Corbin, like Scott said, Corbin's done
House of
the Living Dead. Now, Dr. Fegredo, when he finishes The Fury, he will start doing Hellboy graphic novels. And Duncan's really slow, and we're not rushing him, so I'm not sure how often these books will come out, but these will be books set in those years of Hellboy just being a dude roaming around. So I would love to do a Native American one.
We got a Buddhist thing down the road.
Yeah.
I really like the Hellboy one-shots with Richard Corbin, the Mexico storyline 2 years ago or a year ago, and then the one recently with the Buddhist storyline. Have those been collected yet, or?
He's asking about the one-shots and various Corbin things being collected. Some of it has been, like, we're constantly putting out new trades, and like Crooked Man and others is already out.
Right.
Did Bride of Hell?
No,
Bride of Hell is coming soon. That will collect Mexico.
Mexico.
But yeah, I mean, every one-shot, every little odd thing that we do comes out in one of the trade.
Yeah, it also collects the Bride of Hell also collects the Scott Hampton 2 issue.
Right. Yeah, so all that stuff. I mean, by the time we've done 5 or 6 of them, you let 6 months go by and then trade it back.
Orange.
What about the new original graphic novels you mentioned? Are those going to fit in with the trade paperback numbering, or are they going to be a separate entity?
They're not going to have that numbering on them.
No.
None of them flow in continuity. You know, they're all going to be retro stories.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, they look so much different.
So
we're not going to do that.
Right.
Right there.
When you're writing for other artists like Tyler here, do you provide full scripts and breakdowns, or do you guys discuss an outline in the beginning, or how does that work?
Well, Tyler's fortunate he's never had to have me writing for him. That's a John. John writes full script. I write something that's a kind of half-assed.
It's big. The script feature, I mean, I get a lot of scripts from a lot of different kind of writers. And the thing with comic book writing is that, like, every writer has a kind of different setup. And the weird way that Mike does it, the only thing that's really different from him and a lot of other writers is that he usually doesn't really write the dialogue into the script. He'll write a panel description as long as anybody that will summarize whatever it is they're saying. You know, and the panel description might kind of read, you know, Abe and Liz are standing talking about this. And it'll tell the artist basically what they're saying. Sometimes it'll have rough dialogue that he'll just kind of fine-tune at the lettering stage, but it's pretty much full script. But he used to do layouts a lot,
Right.
and he seldom does.
I very rarely do unless we hit a snag someplace where, I mean, I'm just always more comfortable drawing. So if I spend 20 minutes trying to figure out how to write a paragraph about what I want, and I realize in a minute I can draw what I want, I'll do that.
Yeah, often what will happen is at the layout stage, so, you know, the artist will turn in 22 pages of layouts, and maybe there'll be one page where Mike says, well, can you do this instead? And he'll do his own formula for that. One page where it wasn't quite.
Tyler has encountered that.
But,
for me, as a writer, I like to be able to do my finished script from the artwork. So, for example, with Fury, don't talk about the particular scenes, but there are things that, with a lesser artist, I might have had to write certain emotional beats. But Duncan delivered like I've never seen anybody deliver on some emotional things, and it meant long stretches of silence because the words would have just been so, you know, redundant. But, you know, again, when I plotted it, I thought there would be dialogue pulling me through a particular sequence. But
there's
it
so
didn't
much silence in the third issue.
Yeah.
I got the colors from Dave on my birthday. I was out with my birthday and he showed up on my phone, and I went through the whole comic 3 times because I couldn't believe how good it was.
It really works. Yeah.
Back there.
The author that you guys can almost not afford, what exactly are they going to be writing, and what character? Or
One of the BPRD side projects, and I can't tell you what character, but it's
He didn't want to tell me what character he is.
We're going to surprise him. He's going to be really excited. It'll be a side project, so Tyler will have his thing going, and for a couple of months there'll be another BPRD going on the side. Yep.
The King of England thing caught me by surprise when I
Me
first
too.
read it. Was that a recent thing in your mind?
You know, I don't really know when
That was like 12 years ago. That was a long
Yeah, I think you know, there's a lot of these things I go, yeah, one of these days I'll do this. It's like a joke. Sometimes it's just like to see how he'll react. But yeah, it was always something that I thought would be fun to do. But it was, again, almost like a joke. And
But it was around the time you did Chain Coffin, because Chain Coffin does that story with his mom.
yeah, but I didn't know who his mom was.
But didn't you know at that point that she was?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I thought it was that.
Now I knew there are these things I kind of go, it'll be fun to do this, but I'm not sure really how we're going to get to these particular places. I'm sure by the time I started working with Duncan, I knew that's what was going to happen. Because when we approached Duncan about doing it, it was with the idea that this is a 3-book thing that's going to take us from here through all this shit and end up here. And if I had been drawing the book, I don't know if we ever really would have done that story. Because it was so huge, I just couldn't imagine taking that thing on. Plus, I don't know how we would have ever given Hellboy a girlfriend if I was drawing it.
She may be less cute.
Yeah, she was always been in shadow.
I was curious to hear Tyler's kind of experience, like coming on to this world that's pretty established and stuff like that, and sort of how you pressures of that.
Geez, you know, every time anyone asks me this, like, I have a totally different feeling of how the pressures are. You know what I mean? It's like there's days where it's really easy, and I can't believe, like, oh my gosh, it's the easiest job in the world. And there's days where I'm just like, oh my god. Like, there's a page I'm going to talk to Mike about later today, hopefully, that I've drawn 4 times. And
it is a great pleasure working with us.
Yeah. You know what? Like, if I'm going to draw something 4 times, I'd rather do it for Mike Mignola than anybody else, really. You know. But I won't do it at all. But you know, and coming after Guy Davis is pretty intimidating, because that guy is like one of my favorite artists of all time. So, you know, I think the thing I try to do is just forget all that and have a good time drawing every day. You know what I mean? And just love the stories and the characters. The stuff John's writing right now for BPRD is amazing. It's really, really fun.
Yeah, Tyler started on a very quiet, kind of modest, weird little story. I mean, there's body parts flying around, but comparatively,
one set.
But the next thing up, the Russia movie series that debuts in a little while is huge. It's a significant, you know, turning point for BPRD. And so
but not a reboot.
It's not a reboot. We'll probably only have like 1 or 2 number 1s in September, so that'll be okay. You know what we're talking about.
You mentioned that the Suja storyline takes place in Russia, so I think you read his Petrograd story. Who contacted Tyler? How did he get involved?
Tyler came up to me at a convention at Long Beach and showed me Petrograd pages, and I fell in love with this stuff right away. And it wasn't because, oh, we're looking for a guy to do a Russian miniseries.
So at that point, we thought, I was drawing Russia.
Yeah, we didn't know who, we really did. Like, God, it was drawing Russia. And Monty, for that matter. But it was just the energy in Tyler's stuff. And we didn't know what we were going to do together. I don't even remember what we talked about possibly doing, but I know your name kept coming up for different books. And then when the BPRD thing happened, it was just like, well, you get a big call.
Yeah, it was funny because there were like 4 months where Tyler was one of the names that whenever we were talking about any project, we're like, well, what about this little 2-issue thing with Tyler? What about this 1-shot with Tyler? And nothing was landed on, but you know, but it would have eventually. And then the thing with Guy happens, and that very night, or I guess it was the next morning, Mike and John and I are on the phone, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna offer this to Tyler. Instead of getting a 2-card paid safety deal, we're hitting him up with being regular artists on BPRD, which was probably more job than we was expecting. Way back.
Another question for Tyler. For somebody like myself who's not familiar with your previous work, what do you think that you bring to the title? You know, what do you bring that's new to the title, I guess? Unique compared to other artists that work on those books?
Jeez, I don't know. I eat with a brush. I can't remember the guy's name who did the Abe story. It's all super loose.
James or Patrick Reynolds?
I don't know. Super loose impressions.
Jason Alexander, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that my style sort of sits in the BPRD world really well. I don't know if I'm bringing anything that's like completely unique to the thing. I think it just sort of fits nicely.
It's got a certain charm. You know, it's got a real wonderful character. He's a great character actor, which is great for John, because John's such a great character writer, as opposed to like a big, you know, graphic, you know, stylized kind of thing. There's a very indie character real kind of, it's not even realism,
It's
but
very like personal,
but
like
yeah, there's an intimacy with the characters.
Yeah, that's totally what I bring.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying Francisco Francavilla's work on the covers, and I'm wondering if he's going to continue to do that, and/or if he's going to do any interior work.
I believe he's got something going on in DHP, but there's nothing he's doing with us in the Hellboy books right now. But he's doing a story for us in DHP, I think. Yeah, he's terrific.
He's great.
Had a guy been planning on leaving BPRD, or did it happen on us?
You have to ask him. It came with someone who surprised us. It was very sudden when it happened.
There was a couple days of a lot of phone calls. Actually, about one day of a lot of phone calls. Yeah.
Just a two-part question. First for Mike and Scott. When are the Elder Gods actually coming for you? For Tyler, are you worried this is going to like take your soul?
I have no soul.
One more thing that makes him ideally suited to our
I can't remember where I read recently, maybe it was on Facebook, that you made a post that you stopped using mechanical pencil, and I was wondering if it was because maybe of Tyler's brush and the energy that he uses. Is that why maybe?
No,
is it like influence on you? Or?
No.
Tyler's been teaching Mike a lot.
Yeah. I want to go back to run comics, but I forgot what tool to use. That was just one of those things. I used to always work with a mechanical pencil in the last year or so. I was having one of I don't want to get too much of the technical end of stuff, but one of the problems I've always run into is when the temperature changes. The pencil lead that was perfect the day before is now suddenly too hard. I got so tired of digging through my drawer and like looking for those, perfect pencil leads. And as is always the case with me, the pencil lead I used to use, that company discontinued making it. So I couldn't find anything else that worked. And I thought, well, I got a box of these old art school pencils. I wonder how these work. Hey, that's all right. Got to get a pencil sharpener, but other than that, nice. I'll segue into something that nobody's asked about, and maybe just everybody knows it, but with the end of the Fury,
He slows down to make sure he doesn't say the wrong
yeah. With the end of the Fury, the ongoing Hellboy storyline is written and drawn by me. So
Yeah, so the Corbin House of the Living Dead thing is a flashback. I guess you already said that.
Yeah.
Wait, was there?
I'm just curious, why you had approached anybody, or anybody approached you about doing development work for another entity, or otherwise?
all those, I never pursue that stuff, and all those rights are held by other people, and it's entirely up to them. And the last thing I'm doing is trying to find something that's going to take more time away from the drawing table. I would love for somebody to do that stuff, but I can't imagine being personally involved in any of that stuff myself.
But you also get approached to work on other people's cartoons as well.
Not really. I really rarely get job offers to do other stuff, so which is fine by me. I worked on The Hobbit for 10 days. That was cool. No one will ever see what I did.
Yep.
I noticed there's a tendency in Hellboy, especially more BPRD now, that if you're not one of the main characters, which means you have some special kind of power or ability, you tend to just be a kind of piece of meat, with the exception of a couple of characters. And I was wondering if there was any intention to expand on some of the people that are just people who work at the BPRD.
Yeah, there's a slow burn on that. Like, watch the book, because there's characters that have been introduced in the last couple of years where they're gonna slowly merge, and more of that's gonna be coming. So yeah, the roster of the team is evolving a lot. You've noticed Liz is kind of MIA.
Abe is
No, not yet. No, Abe got shot.
Yes,
Yeah,
Abe
so
got
Abe is laid up right now. So things are changing, and you know, characters like Devin and Tanya's certainly not a normal character, but Devin has been increasingly important in the book and will continue to be a central character. And there's some other regular humans, names that you've heard a couple times that you're going to hear more frequently.
And part of the change is the focus of the book has been for years relatively small on this little tight-knit group of odd characters. And as those characters get stripped out of the book, and the scope of the book expands, there is more room for regular humans. It was never my intention to add more super-powered characters. So, yeah, it's very rare. I mean, you're not going to get, you know, it's never going to be the X-Men. You're never going to get a gazillion characters with different weird powers.
Did you come up with Panya or did John?
I came up with the idea of a mummy. I don't remember why. But you know what this book is? A mummy. It was a he when I mentioned it. I don't know why he would be there. I don't know what niche I thought that would fill. We need more characters in this book. How about a mummy?
Yeah, and she'll be in a wheelchair.
Great, for like 20 years. We're really on the cutting edge of flash. Jim Lee's going to come in and redesign all the characters. So it's a little collar. Yeah. A little thing on your chin. Make a run faster. Next. Or we like to keep careening in that direction.
Yeah, any questions? Yes.
Any chance of seeing any Hellboy crossovers?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, there was one we were talking about. And there's so much to do. Like, you know, there's so much to do with these characters right now. You know, like throwing a crossover on there. Generally, crossovers don't contribute much to the ongoing story.
I mean, I like what I did with Eric Powell because it was stupid.
Oh,
you know?
Oh,
that's right. We did Beast of Burden, which was cute. But I have no interest in doing those kind of real, you know, Hellboy versus the Demon or Superman, especially with the way that stuff looks now. There's no interest in that stuff at all.
Yeah.
I was wondering if Mr. Tyler, like if he was either consciously or unconsciously coming after a guy, like if he had any felt any pressure, like to make his stuff fit in with the guy's artwork.
You're asking, did he feel or did we put any pressure on him?
Oh no, did he feel consciously or unconsciously like any sort of pressure to change his work at all, the way he naturally works
No. But the hard thing with Guy is that there's so much stuff that he draws that is, it can only exist the way Guy draws it. Like there's all these women's hairdos that I'm trying to come up with right now. And so there's things that, I'm sorry my voice keeps cracking, I was screaming at people last night. The hard part is just sort of like figuring out what is Guy's style and what is the thing actually look like if it existed in real life, you know. So
that's the trick with Mike's stuff too. A lot of artists come into our world because Mike and Guy are both so stylized. Like one of the problems with Hellboy is that some artists assume that Hellboy looks like that because of Mike's style, but no, he really does have like a shovel for a jaw, and you know, he doesn't have a lip. Don't give him a lip. That's not just Mike's style. And yeah, I can imagine the same with Hellboy Guy.
Hellboy, by the way, is so hard to draw. It's amazing. I'm just getting to do it right every
But I can't really draw anything else.
Questions? Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Can you say what you did on The Hobbit? Not what I thought I was going to be doing on The Hobbit. I don't know that I would have taken a 62-hour plane ride to work on what I had to work on The Hobbit. But he lured me to New Zealand to do something fun. And it was fun. It was exciting. It was great. There was something. I'm not complaining. mostly it was architectural stuff, but again, that was when Del Toro was doing The Hobbit. So, to the best of my, understanding, everything that was designed in that period is scrapped. But even then, I mean, it was only 10 days. Even had Del Toro continued on with The Hobbit, the scale of that production is so gigantic that thinking those 10 days of work, heavily jet lagged days of work, would have made it through the mix. It wasn't like in the old days when he and I did Blade 2, we did Hellboy. Our art department was 3 guys. You get to New Zealand and everybody in New Zealand is working on The Hobbit. Almost literally. Yeah. But it's like, there's a Pixar picture coming out next year, and I worked on it for 3 days. I'm not expecting anything I did to show up in the movie, because I worked on it years ago, and 1 billion people have worked on it. So maybe a speck of an idea influenced this guy, who influenced that guy, but there's so many hands on that stuff, and so much time, and so much reworking that it's really hard to make a stamp on a giant picture like that.
But if it's a Pixar movie, if you see 3 seconds of Cthulhu spitting out a monkey shooting a gun.
That wasn't the script that I read.
So you do have this phenomenal expansive world, these rosters of characters and multiple books, and how much of that had these gaps in Hellboy's life for the 50 years you've been doing? How much of that was not strategy is the right word, but how much of that potential was there when you conceived Hellboy in the beginning?
When I conceived it in the beginning, it wasn't really there at all. This thing really did take on a life of its own, and if there's one thing I'm happier about than anything else, it is that we made this. I mean, I'm not dying to create the biggest universe thing. We could expand this a lot more, than we have. But I love the way all the pieces fit together. I love that it's. You don't need to read Witchfinder to read Hellboy. It's not a trick, the story continues over here. But if you read Witchfinder, you get a fuller picture of certain parts of the history, and it's just such a fun game to introduce, a bit of Hyperborean history over here, another bit of it over here. What's a pain in the ass is when you go back and you go, where did we mention this? Because there are like 32 different books where I mentioned Hyperborea, and I know I said something somewhere, but I can't find it.
Yeah, there's a lot of books now. Like for the 8th thing that we're planning for Ways in the Future, there's this supporting character, there's this minor character that we're going to pull in, and it's like, where have we really dealt with him? Where did we say his name, and where did we show him in the past? And I had to stick the assistant on it to go digging. Like I asked Arcudi, and he's like, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
And so Dan goes up with a copy of Witchfinder and like BPRE Volume 11. I'm like, really? Okay, great. And that's all done on the character. But it's like, oh, yeah, Witchfinder is where the most information on these particular characters get expressed, and he's going to show up again. That's a pretty important guy.
Yeah.
So it's fun. I think one of the things that's fun about working with Mike and fun about the way Mike writes is that he's constantly like suggesting things and leaving these little threads hanging out there that are suggestive of plot lines. He doesn't necessarily have the plot line there, but it suggests that there could be more stuff. So that 5 years down the road, we might say, okay, we're doing this story. Well, we need to come up with, we need this. Oh, well, we kind of like maybe that's what that was, and then we can pull it in. And I think another writer trying to do that deliberately might fall on his face. Another writer might be so inclined to tie everything together that you wouldn't have the room to be expansive in the way that we are.
I mean, when I look at this stuff, except in Baltimore, which is a completely different thing, I do look at it as one big story. I don't look at it as this is this book over here, this is this book over here. Now, certain things are different. Like when John is the primary writer on the Lobster Johnson stuff, though he and I talked about an arc to that character, and I do know certain things that character did along the years. So, I've sent him some notes, and we've talked about certain things, but that's mostly going to be John's thing.
But then also, John might be suggesting things or doing things there, and he's going to pick up the UPRD.
Right.
So John
will be laying the groundwork for, his own, stuff. But from where I'm sitting, the prehistory stuff and the Victorian era stuff, I know so much of that stuff that I have planned, and I'd love to get it into the book. I've made up these elaborate histories, and instead of just forcing them all in there, it's just kind of like, oh, here's another place to add a piece of this and a piece of this. So it's coming out as organically as I can do it.
Yeah, he just, every so often, pop up a little manifesto sometimes. He just gave us one the other day that, like, we know it's going to matter. Some of the BPRD spin-off stuff. It ties into books that Mike has done recently. I'm going to need to use it. Arthur may or may not.
Every once in a while, I got to remember that nobody knows what the hell is in my head. So I have to write up something. Here's how vampires work. Here's this. Here's that.
Yeah, every so often, Michael, I'll ask Mike a question. He's like, I already told you that. I said, well, you told me that among like 90 million other bits of information that are constantly evolving. So it's sometimes hard to keep track because I'm not totally in there.
Well, when we did that in Hellboy Panel, I mean, it was kind of like open the floodgates. I don't know if everybody's seen that book, but it was so much fun writing the history. And like four of us worked on the histories of these characters. So most of the new information I added, but you added.
I was adding stuff, John.
And what's her name?
Victoria made up something.
Victoria made up a lot of stuff. It was so much fun to flesh out these characters. And in fact, I think the first entry in the part of the book that's entries about characters, there's a whole page on a person who's never appeared in any of the books. Right. The Rhode Island keyboard. And she's hugely important to me, but there's never been a place to work her into the book.
She mentioned, but yeah, she's never done anything. Not there?
Yeah, Hellboy has a couple of movies, animated movies, like direct to video. Are there any other characters that you may want to bring, or is it something in the process? Or
again, that's not. I have no say in that stuff. There's no talks, no plans to my knowledge for any future animated stuff. The animated stuff was to, had a live action picture out there to support it. With no live action picture, I just don't imagine there's any interest in an animated Hellboy.
What about something like Screw-On Head?
Again, there's talk. Every once in a while, there's talk of an animated Screw-On Head. It's nothing I would be involved in. I'm one of those rare comics guys who actually wants to do comics.
Along that line, with what you already with the Liz Sherman one, just the remember, that would probably make pretty decent animated feature. Do you guys, Dark Horse handle any of that, or is all the rights?
Dark Horse Entertainment's involved, but again, I mean,
those rights are all Hellboy Universal.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, all the entertainment stuff.
Tyler, first, I love your work.
Thank you.
What kind of influence did Mike have on you, and how much of a fan were you? I know you sought him out to do it for him. Did you use the doodle stuff it is? Or?
Oh yeah, I used to draw. The longer I've been working with you, actually, the more I'm like remembering all this crazy stuff. Like I used to draw hands the way he drew hands on the covers of Alpha Flight.
You're older than you look.
Yeah, that was back when you could buy comics in the grocery store. And so there's been like Mike. I've been following Mike's work like almost the entire time I've been reading comics. It seems like. So he's been a pretty big influence. I don't know if it really comes through in my work. I'm not trying to draw like him by any stretch of the imagination because nobody can. But he's been.
Yeah.
Have you thought very much about the end of Hellboy, or how his story is going to conclude?
I know how the world ends. Certain characters have certain parts to play, and so I know the various places Hellboy is going and what happens when he gets there. So it's not just this random. There's a lot of room for characters to wander around, but little by little we know where this guy's gonna end up. he's going to end up here. You know what this guy's function in the apocalyptic vision is? It's this. And some of these things with some of these characters we've come up with fairly recently. The beauty of this thing is to grow it organically. It's kind of like the whole King Arthur thing. I knew that thing was going to happen, or some version of it was going to happen, but you didn't really know who the players were going to be. And then as these stories go along, certain characters, like that little pig-headed guy, who was just a one-off guy from the Story of the Corpse. That guy, when I brought him back, that guy really, instead of just being a minor player in the story, that story started becoming his story. So there are all these kind of gaps, and little by little the characters can say, hey, that's my job, and they step in there. But that's why I want to keep these characters, give these characters enough room to have these kind of lives and roam around. But I do know where the major players are going.
No, that part. Yeah, like recently we've mapped out a lot of the future with these major benchmarks, and we're seeing, okay, we've got to get there. There's like the clock is ticking on the whole storyline, and so we're moving characters directly where they have to go.
And it's weird when these characters start getting where they're going, because you kind of go, I used to say I would pop Hellboy's eye out. It's really weird to be there when you like actually writing this Hellboy's eye that's plucked out. Oh, Duncan really drew Hellboy with his eye plucked out. I didn't think we'd really do that. Guess there's no coming back from that. That is really strange when you turn the corner, certain corners with these characters, and you go, unlike some things, some other comic book universes out there, when I turn these corners, I kind of go, wow, I'm never really going to be able to undo that. So this character has changed. And that's what keeps it really exciting to me is changing these characters.
You just said that you guys have a general idea of the number of beats left. To give you an idea, I'm not in a hurry to have this right to end, but are you guys looking at, do you guys have a rough timeline for you got 10 years more story, 20 years more story?
We don't have a timeline exactly.
Well, we're getting older.
Yeah.
Are you going to Robert Jordan on that?
You don't know what that is. But yeah, I mean, like we see it, but we also know that we can drop as many stories in the middle. Those landmarks that the characters have to hit. We can drop as much in the middle as we want, but we're kind of so excited about what's happening that we're rolling with the acceleration right now.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is I think we're going to keep, again, between John and me and Scott, we're keeping all this stuff moving, but I think there's going to come a point where we go, well, we know we're going to do this one of these days. Oh shit, are we there? I think that there's going to be those moments, and it's not just one of those moments, there's several of those moments where you just go, oh, well, this is like Hellboy's eye. You go, oh, you know what? This is when that happens.
Right.
So yeah, we don't have it like mapped out, like, we have 3 months for this, 3 months for this. Some things do end up like that, but the big story, it doesn't have a day and date, on it.
We know there are specific events coming in 2012 and 2013, but beyond that, we have a more nebulous picture of how it all.
In 2011.
Yes, yeah, there's probably
a couple ones are going to drop on you this year still.
I feel guaranteed it will end on a Wednesday.
And the comics market, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows when you can get the comics in a few years. All right, I think maybe one more. Anybody?
Yes.
Are there any completely crazy things you want to do with what comics might do with technology in the future?
We're not much that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I am the least technology guy. As long as I can continue to draw my book the way I draw my book, and as long as ultimately it's collected into a book that I can put on my shelf, if the pamphlet goes away at some point, which seems inevitable, I don't know. But there's nothing about technology that makes me go, ooh, let's make it so how we can wiggle back and forth in every panel. At my booth the other day, it's like, look, the hair can blow around. It's great for somebody's comic. Maybe take that to Rob Liefeld. The muscles can just twitch.
technology and how it will interact with the story, but we've never things like that with Hellboy.
Cool.
But we know that like changes in the technology is going to change how you're getting the comics, but it probably won't really change the things you're reading, you know, just how you might read them a little bit. But yeah, Hellboy will stay the course as long as anybody. Okay, one more question. Or no more. Yes.
What have been some of your favorite monsters to draw?
This is a one for a cover thing.
Oh yeah.
Can we tell them about that?
Sure. Speaking of monsters, our variant cover program. I've never been a big fan of variant covers, but okay, one of us came up with this idea to do a year's worth of variant covers on the various titles, and every cover will feature a different monster. So
not necessarily tied to the interior.
Not at
almost
all.
Into it.
My favorite character, I love drawing Frankenstein monster type characters. I mean, I love monsters in general, but it was fun to make a list of 12 monsters and just pair different characters up fighting different monsters. I just like monsters in general.
All right, thanks everybody. Are you doing a signing, or where are you doing today?
I'm at booth 4901.
And also a trickster, right?
Sometimes a trickster, yeah, usually after hours, drinking time. I also am doing a panel here.
At 1 o'clock with Dave Stewart.
At 1 o'clock with Dave Stewart.
Profile of Dave Stewart. Mike's going to make Dave talk, which is going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's weird.
And what are you doing as far as signings and such?
I am signing at the Dark Horse booth tomorrow.
With me, I think.
Or with you.
separate.
Yeah, I think it's with you. I don't remember what time.
Okay, well if you go by the Dark Horse booth, there's TVs everywhere with signing schedules on them. So come by the Dark Horse booth, we're selling all these guys' stuff. You know, it's hidden in a box, but we're selling all the stuff and then we're signing tomorrow. So thanks, guys.